Hi, welcome to Gender Speaker, the 7th day. This is Monday, the 7th of September. Hi, good afternoon and welcome. Today I'm going to be talking about, following on a little bit from yesterday, looking at male and female behaviour, nature versus nurture. When I did my master's degree back, 2006, 2005 now, this was the biggest topic I had to cover. I've probably got more books on the issue of understanding the difference between men and women than any other topic. Some of it on a very technical, scientific level, some like Alan Pease's book. Alan's a good friend of mine, and his book is a little bit more light-hearted, and he's always taken a slightly more light-hearted look at the whole issue. But I want to really look at that. Let me first of all just remind you one thing: transgender, non-binary inclusion workshop. I'm running these. I'm running one on Wednesday and one on Thursday. I'm going to be doing more in the future as well. But if you're interested in attending, the details are in the comments below. Just check there and you'll see a link going to the Eventbrite page. It's donation basis, so pay what you can afford to come along. And I'll mention a little bit later on. So let me just remind you, you probably saw the film My Fair Lady. And remember that song, Why Can't a Woman Be More Like a Man? And it probably encapsulates the problem and the issue that we've got, that men and women appear to be very similar, but oh my God, we are so different. And the issue then is, why are we so different? What is it that makes men and women so different? Is that something that's inherent? Is that something we're born with? Or is it something we learn from the way in which we're nurtured? And the debate, the battle has been going on for years. It continues even today to still go on, with no sense that it's ever going to get to a conclusion. But it's probably necessary to understand it more, because we live in a world. I started work in 1969, and I'll be honest, in 1969, there were women who came to work wearing a pair of trousers who were sent home because they were inappropriately dressed. Can you believe that? Today, now you get work in a pair of jeans and it'll be okay. But, there was this very definite hierarchy that was very strong then and almost encouraged. There was the Sex Discrimination Act hadn't come about, so women were routinely paid far less than men for doing exactly the same job. Women had to learn very quickly, if you can type and you want a career, don't let anybody know. Because if you could type, you became a secretary. If you hung around with the secretaries, you'd be treated like a secretary. So I found that career women, I worked in the insurance industry, career women always found they dare not wear a dress. They had to wear a suit. They had to make themselves look different, more masculine than other women. And that was the interesting thing. In order to get on, women had to emasculate themselves, make themselves look more male, behave in a more masculine way. And of course, when a woman behaves in a more masculine way, then we actually don't like that. We want women to be soft and gentle. And we've got these cultural norms around what we expect of behavior. Some of you may have read the book Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus, or seen it. It's been around for a long, long time. Not a fan of the book, to be perfectly honest, because in essence, when you look at it, it's really John Gray telling women how they can behave to be more accommodating and to treat their men better. I am a big fan, however, of Deborah Tannen. Now, she's got a lot of people don't like her. A lot of feminists went against her because she seemed to be suggesting that she looked at the behavior of women and the behavior of men in the workplace. She said, I'm not saying whether you were born with that or whether it was learned or what. She said, I'm just observing what is happening, and this is what I see. And she noticed the way in which women behave, which invariably puts them one down from men, positions them as less important. And the danger, the moment we start to get into any of this discussion around men and women's behaviors, is that we come up against the big issue of stereotypes. If I say men do this or women do that, is that just a stereotype? Well, let's just address the whole issue of stereotypes, because a lot of people instantly think, well, stereotypes are wrong. They're negative. No, they're not. Stereotypes are true. All stereotypes are true. The problem is that all stereotypes are not true for everyone. It's what scientists call empirical generalizations. Let me just give you some sorts of ideas about the whole challenge with stereotypes. Men run faster than women. That's pretty much a stereotype. Men run faster than women. Men can run a marathon faster than women. Trans women facing a huge problem about this at the moment, because if somebody who was a man changes gender to become a woman and then goes on to compete in a sport and does well, are they doing well because actually they've got a male body and therefore it's unfair because they can outperform a woman? Well, look at two things on that. The first is, take Paula Radcliffe, one of the greatest female marathon runners of all time. Now, there's no question about it. Paula Radcliffe could not outrun all of the top men in the field, marathon, top male marathon runners. But the question is, how many men could outrun Paula Radcliffe? Because I suspect that it's 99.9% of men could not outrun Paula Radcliffe on a marathon. And research seems to suggest that had she run a double marathon, a super marathon, in fact, very few of the top men would have been able to outrun her, because women have more stamina when it comes to running marathons. So we've got to understand stereotypes in the context of where they are. Yes, if you take the average speed of all men running a marathon and compare it to the average speed of all women running marathons, men will be faster. But individually, that's not the case. The issue over trans women is going to be a big challenge. If Caitlyn Jenner had changed gender at age 30, at the height of her prowess as Bruce Jenner performing in decathlons, and began to compete against women, there would have been an absolute uproar, and rightly so. Because there's no question that at that stage, Caitlyn would have been benefiting from all of that performance and endurance and all that muscle building that had happened as a man, which a woman won't achieve no matter how much she tries. But having taken estrogen for a long period of time, undergone surgery, would she now be outperforming? Would she be performing simply because she was a very good athlete and happened to be better? History shows us that few trans women who are in sport are actually at the top of the game. They're generally being outperformed. The problem is, the moment one or two do very well, instantly they're picked upon as an example of why trans women should not be allowed to compete in women's sports. It's a big challenge, big problem. I knew Martina Navratilova went into it with the belief that trans women shouldn't be competing, came away from it not sure. More research needed. So we'll come back to it. Is all of this nature versus, is it nature or is it nurture? What makes the difference between men and women? Now, when I changed gender, I found that it was quite interesting because I wasn't ready and had not been prepared for the level of change that I would have to undertake in my behavior. And it's behavior in order to be accepted. I needed to be and wanted to be accepted by other women. I want to be accepted by other men as a woman, or as female at least. And that created some challenges and problems. The first is that there's a requirement that I have to perform how I look, and look as feminine as possible, look as pretty as possible. Because face it, men are judged by what they do, how they perform. Women are judged by how they look. Doesn't matter who they are, how well they get on. Top female politicians, and the first thing that happens in the media is a description of what they're wearing. That won't happen to the top male politicians because they're all wearing the same thing anyway. But there's the problem, that women are put on the spot. I remember I was walking down King's Road one day in Chelsea, and a woman was walking along the same road, And as she was walking along, I think I may have talked about this in one of the other podcasts. I'll tell it again anyway. As I was walking along the road, she walked past me, and she had her skin was almost orange with suntan, but she was also wearing a figure-hugging woolen dress. Well, every single man I suddenly felt this weird, strange sensation as everybody looking at her. And when I started changing gender, when I started to change gender and started to go out at night, I wasn't used to the idea that I couldn't just walk down any street on my own late at night without actually having somebody come up and try to chat me up. And as a consequence of that, women start to learn to avoid risk. And I think that starts right from an early age. Parents, we're much more worried about the challenges that might face our young daughters. So we don't let them go out at night. We don't let them talk to strangers. We're much more careful with our sons as well. But boys, we allow go do things that we don't let girls do. Yeah, boys climb trees and jump around and ride bikes and do stupid things. Girls, we all know, don't be so silly. No, don't rip your dress. And there's an awful lot of don't for girls that doesn't exist for boys. I saw that between myself and my sisters. They were annoyed by it when I was very young. They were annoyed that they were being constrained, weren't allowed to do things that I and my brother were allowed to do. And that's part of that whole nurture problem, that we are being constantly trained and schooled to behave in a different way. I noticed when I changed gender, I'd get into a meeting and I noticed immediately that if in a group of women, actually a little bit of swearing takes place, but nothing like as much as when there are men. If a man joins the group that are women, almost zero swearing by women. Not always the case. Lots of women do swear, but generally what I found is that it didn't happen. I went to a networking event, a big networking event at a speaking convention in America. And I noticed as I got there, women who I hadn't known before I changed gender were really quite excited. Oh, you've got to meet this person. And they made sure I was connected up with people they thought would be useful for me. That networking was much more inclusive. It was, they'd say, oh, you must meet somebody. And a day later, oh, Ricky, come over here. Come on, this is who I mentioned. And I'd be connected with someone and they'd make sure that happened. Whereas I noticed that men tended to find a really good contact who they thought would be useful for them and then protect them from everybody else. Don't let anybody else get near them. Keep them so they become almost inseparable. And that's, they've connected up their friend. So women are much more sharing. And if you look at the way in which we structure organizations, there's a real difference between men and women there. Men like hierarchical structures. It's the way we organize the military, with somebody at the top and a hierarchy of control all the way down to the troops at the bottom. And we just ported that hierarchical command and control system into business. We still call the chief executive, we still talk about leaders in the same way that we talk about leaders within the military. We talk about the commanding the troops, going to battle with the competitors. Yet all the same language is used. Captains of industry. We use that same language from military as we ported across to the structures of commerce. Now, women don't organize businesses anything like the same way. Women organize things on a much flatter, networked basis. And I've looked at a lot of women who run businesses, and they say they might show their shareholders and everybody else this nice organization chart, this hierarchical structure. But the reality is it's a networked system. Anita Roddick, manager who owned the body shop and set up the body shop, removed the position of manager from many of her shops because she found that if she promoted one of the staff up to manager, the hierarchy was broken because women didn't like that hierarchical structure. They preferred to be a group of women running the shop, and they would all support and help each other without the need for someone to be in charge. Whereas men like a hierarchy, they like a structure. I lived for 50 years as a man. I know exactly how it happens. You fight it out, you tough it out with somebody. You need to make sure that somebody understands you are the boss, you are one up on them. And when you've got that one up, then that's it. There's no real physical fight. But once you've earned the right to be leader, then you stay in that position until somebody dethrones you. And it is a constant battle. Men are very combative and competitive. I'm not saying women aren't competitive, but the level of competition between men and women is different. Women are much more likely to work together. Now, that said, the structure is run by men. The structure is organized by men. When women come into it, in order to compete, they have to try to ape what men do in order to get on. They need to go up an organization structure designed by men, and therefore they have to emulate those same behaviors and practices. If women start the business and run it themselves, they will flatten it, and they will actually use a much more networked approach to building their business. So one other interesting thing I'll show you, this is about unconscious bias and the way in which we treat men, we favor men over women. 14% of men are 6 foot or taller in the world generally. That's the average height. But 60% of chief executives are 6 foot or taller. Now, think about this in the context of women rising to the position of chief executive. If we are unconsciously biased towards height and likely, therefore, to appoint the taller person into the job of chief executive over the shorter people, that is a discrimination against women. And it's not an active, open discrimination. It's like an unconscious discrimination. We are discriminating against women simply because overall they are shorter, and it's not overtly done. It's being done, unconsciously. So behavioural differences. That's really where we are. The biggest thing I've noticed is about risk taking. I mentioned that earlier on. Men take more risks than women. I think that's why men tend to accelerate themselves in jobs. They take risks, and if it works, then it's good for them. But at the same time, women are better educationally. Women have more A-levels. Women get more degrees, more PhDs, more master's degrees, and yet men still seem to get better jobs. And I've been on recruitment panels, and I've seen that women will arrive and they tick every single box and more. And they won't actually apply for a job until they tick every single box. Whereas a man will look at the job requirements and think, oh, I can do half of that. The rest I'll learn. I'll go for it. Or women will think, no, I need to tick every box. Otherwise I won't be good enough. And that's a change that needs to be understood. Now that's social. That's been socialized. Women have been socialized into believing you have to be right at the top in order to be able to do anything. Men know that if they can just blag their way through, they'll bluff it until they can make it, fake it till they make it. So that's some thoughts around male and female behavior. Some of it is nature. Some of it is about physical strength. Some of it is about the way in which we're wired. The risk-taking factor we see clearly in extreme sports. Men will take risks. They take risks when they're driving. Men are far more likely to have accidents at higher speeds than women. With women, it's often very low-speed accidents. Men have speeds because they take risks, sometimes unnecessarily. So businesses collapse because men take risks unnecessarily. So sometimes businesses don't move because women don't take the risk. So difficult balances to be able to pull together. Anyway, that's my thoughts, a few ideas around male and female behavior, nature versus nurture. Come back to it. We'll come back to it from time to time. Join me again tomorrow. I shall be having another little look at another aspect of gender. And don't forget that my transgender non-binary inclusion workshop on Wednesdays and Thursdays. Please do come along and join me. Just click on the link below and sign up. And I look forward to seeing you on Wednesday or Thursday. Okay. Thanks for being here. Look forward to seeing you tomorrow.